Good morning, I'm Doug Petcash. Welcome to Face the State. This morning, the rising concern over AI-generated child pornography.
My colleagues and I have been increasingly concerned about what this could mean for victimization, sexual depictions of children.
What are those steps? The Attorney General this morning discusses the new ways Ohio is clamping down and protecting kids.
There's a lot of anxiety when you're in East Palestine that the people are experiencing. We're almost 8 months out. So a lot of people feel that, the focal point is left East Palestine, and these people still have fears.
Discuss East Palestine with the state senator who both lives and represents the community. Plus, the new promises made by Norfolk Southern, why some lawmakers don't think they'll become reality. And the next chapter in the history of the Columbus Metropolitan Library as it celebrates and closes the book on its first century and a half. Good morning on this Sunday, September 24th, and welcome to Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. A busy week at the State House is behind us with several new bills filed, some controversial. There's been movement on redrawing those gerrymandered legislative district maps and emotional testimony from victims of abuse at the hands of Boy Scout leaders. But we're starting this week with an interview with Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. I sat down with the AG to talk about protecting the unprotected. Among them, a warning from his office and other attorneys general across the country about new ways people are exploiting children. First, though, Lindsay Mills on the topic of AI-generated child pornography, then the concerns about it from AG Yost today.
When artificial intelligence ends up in the wrong hands, it can exploit children here in Ohio and across the country. Now, attorneys general from dozens of states are urging Congress to create a commission to combat this.
These crimes are happening right now.
Columbus-based artificial intelligence expert Chris Pragesh is also a father.
I'm definitely terrified of the potential of if this could ever happen.
Knowing firsthand the capabilities of AI, he doesn't post any photos of his children online.
Unfortunately, technology comes first. Regulation always tries to catch up. In our case, with this AI, the explosion at which, the pace at which it is happening, it's very hard for the regulators to actually predict what else could be happening.
He supports the need for more regulation of artificial intelligence to protect children.
The internet has created life for the better in many ways. It has also created more ways to exploit children.
The call for action echoed by Callahan Walsh, the executive director of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
And child predators know that, and they're using the internet to prey on our kids.
This week, in a letter to Congress, attorneys general are urging new and swift action, requesting that an expert commission be established by Congress to study the means and methods of AI used to exploit children through what is known as child sexual abuse material. The problem is disturbing. As the letter explains, AI tools can rapidly and easily create deep fakes by studying real photographs of abused children to generate new images showing those children in sexual positions. This involves overlaying the face of one person on the body of another. Images can be used of unharmed children to create new, realistic, sexualized images. The tools can run in an unrestricted and unpoliced way. Cybersecurity experts say it's more important than ever to take matters into your own hands and remember the advice you've heard before.
Be very mindful with your children, who they're communicating with, what apps they're using, and always keep an eye on what information you're sending out. It might seem like it's a good idea at the time, but believe me, your life isn't worth it being destroyed for one picture.
Lindsay Mills, 10 TV News.
Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost joined every state attorney general in the U.S. to say time is of the essence on this issue. As you heard Lindsay report, they are urging Congress to set up an expert commission to study how AI technology can be used to hurt our kids and then take action on what the study finds. I talked with AG Yost and asked how this issue first came to his attention.
Well, in some ways, it's been around for a while because, back in the 90s, we had the Ashcroft case because there was a question about faked photographs, right, with the rise of Photoshop. But this, in the last year or so, as we started seeing these deepfake videos and chatbot GPT and some of the visually oriented artificial intelligence, my colleagues and I have been increasingly concerned about what this could mean for victimization, sexual depictions of children.
So obviously that level of concern prompted you and all the attorneys general across the country to take some action. What are those steps that you've taken in asking Congress to do?
Well, we had a letter that went from all 50 Republicans and Democrats in between. Every state attorney general in the country signed this letter asking Congress to, first of all, start a blue ribbon panel of experts to say, what are we going to do about this? Because it's kind of scary. And to look at the existing law and what needs to change, what guardrails do we need to protect children. And in my view, we ought to also be concerned about what do we do about the way this is feeding evil desires. The fact of the matter is, when pedophiles are using this kind of pornography, it is intensifying and motivating things that don't need motivated.
What is your office doing, or what can your office do then on a state level to combat something like this?
So this fall, we will be bringing forward a couple of ideas we've been working on for the last year for state regulation of some important things. I know Lieutenant Governor doesn't believe we should have state regulation here, but I disagree. Just because we don't know everything that could happen and can't do something that covers every possible scenario doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at legal protections for the things that are right in front of us.
Now, there's only so much parents can do to protect their kids from something like these deep fake videos. Do you recommend that parents just don't put photos of their youngest children on social media? What can they do to protect themselves and their kids?
Well, I think it's up to society in this case to protect against scraping images off. I mean, so you don't put them up on social media. That creep down the street could use a camera with a long lens and take pictures, and you might never know about it. I think parents should be careful about what they put up on social media and how long they leave it there. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the misappropriation of somebody else's photograph for bad ends. That ought to be the kind of thing that we can deal with legally and provide protections for everybody in society. This isn't a Wild West where you got to make your own way and you're completely on your own.
I remember this is just the next step in the progression of technology. It's been going on since the internet came about, and I've watched as law enforcement agencies, attorneys general offices across the state, across the country have tried to adapt and keep up with this kind of thing. And so how much of a challenge is it to try to stay at least even with these bad actors out there?
This is no different than any other kind of crime, right? I mean, they're constantly innovative and making up new ways to do bad stuff, which means that law enforcement has to roll with it and continue to develop. That's one of the reasons we put together an initiative I call COP 2030 to look at the future and how do we evolve against evolving criminal threats.
Well, in other state news now, the public is now getting a chance to weigh in on a newly proposed set of Republican-drawn maps for state house and Senate districts. The Ohio Redistricting Commission adopted the maps Wednesday over Democratic objections. The plan would again give Republicans large majorities in both chambers of the legislature. The maps would create a 23-10 advantage for Republicans in the state Senate and a 62-37 edge in the House. House Minority Leader Allison Russo said those numbers are nowhere close to the partisan split among Ohio voters, which is roughly 54% Republican and 46% Democratic. This is all happening after the state Supreme Court ruled the last 5 redistricting maps unconstitutional because they unfairly gerrymandered in favor of Republicans. The first public hearing on the proposed Republican map was Friday at Deer Creek State Park. The next is Monday in Geauga County. The final public hearing is Tuesday at 10 in the morning in the Senate Finance Hearing Room at the State House here in Columbus. We do have more ahead. This week, new promises were made by Norfolk Southern as the railroad tries to buy its way out of the East Palestine mess.
People that live there, I think you go back to your regular life, but I think it's in the back of your mind.
A man very familiar with the cleanup efforts there. I sat down with the state senator who lives in and represents the people in Columbiana County. We discuss where new safety recommendations stand today. Plus, emotional testimony this week at the State House. Boy Scout abuse survivors calling on a law change before time runs out. Welcome back to Face the State. Emotional testimony this week before an Ohio Senate committee by victims of sexual abuse at the hands of Boy Scout leaders. At issue is how nearly 2,000 victims in Ohio will be compensated from a settlement with the Boy Scouts of America. House Bill 35 would scrap Ohio's statute of limitations for child sex abuse in bankruptcy cases. That statute must be removed for victims to receive their full share of the settlement money. Ohio victims say they want to be treated equally.
There should exist no statute of limitation that shields perpetrators from accountability. Moreover, the nature of trauma is such that it frequently compels survivors to remain silent for years, as witnessed in the experiences of many men I have encountered as a part of the Scouts Honor community, including myself.
Ohio victims could receive anywhere between tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. President Joe Biden ordered a federal coordinator to oversee long-term recovery efforts in East Palestine. It's been 7 months since a Norfolk Southern train crashed, spilling toxic chemicals and igniting that large fire. The EPA will continue to oversee removal and disposal of toxic waste from the site. The president wants an updated report on his desk within the next 30 days. Also this week, Norfolk Southern says it will pay the difference in lost home values for people who live near the site. By accepting the money, however, the homeowner will sign away their right to sue. Senator Sherrod Brown calls the pledge to pay up a, quote, empty promise, saying Ohioans deserve their day in court to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, and this program denies them that. And this week, I spoke with State Senator Michael Rulli, who lives in and represents the East Palestine area. He sits on the State Senate Select Committee on Rail Safety. I started by asking him what he thinks are the key components or recommendations that came out of the Select Committee's report on the derailment.
Well, the report tackles a lot of different subjects. The part of the subject I like a lot is the detectors, because we're going to look at the bearings when the trains go over the crossings, so we can see if there's a temperature elevation or if there's a sound that is maybe signaling that we have a problem with the bearings.
And also they're looking at testing soil and the environment for years to come.
That's a part that I really like a lot. So actually, it was a bipartisan, where a couple people from the other side of the aisle, myself, that we have proposed an amendment at the very end of the whole committee, where for 20 years we can observe oil and air sampling, because there's a lot of anxiety when you're in East Palestine that the people are experiencing. You know, we're almost 8 months out. So a lot of people feel that, you know, the focal point is left East Palestine, and these people still have fears, especially the carcinogenics that could hurt them, you know, 4, 5, 10 years down the road. So we thought that 20 years was a nice window that we could really get our hands around whether there's going to be future problems.
Does the report itself and the committee have teeth to make these improvements happen, or is the next step up to the legislature?
Well, the next step is going to be actually in the next budget. So I don't know if that would be something that could be handled in the capital budget, or if that's going to be kicked down the road till we get to the other budget. But the recommendations are there. And not only that, but with the one amendment, you know, you have to be careful with constitutional law as far as, money that is tied to how these processes work. but we took it as far as we could possibly take it. So it's completely set up, the blueprint's there. So when the budget comes out, all you have to do is fill in the parts.
Now, you live in Salem. You represent the East Palestine area. You're there among the folks who are dealing with this now. What is the feeling on the ground among those who live in the area?
Well, a lot's changed. You know, we had problems with the governor from Michigan where she wasn't allowing the contaminated soil to leave. So if you would have been there in like April, May, or June, it's a lot different than these Palestine you see right now. In April, May, and June, you still had that sweet chemical smell in the air. We had contaminated soil everywhere, and only one of the tracks had been replaced. Now both of the tracks have been replaced. The soil has been removed and taken off of ground. A lot of the businesses are opening up. So if you never knew there was a problem there, and I took you to East Palestine today, you probably wouldn't know there was a problem. But being a Monday morning quarterback, we see that, in particular right now this summer, that there's a lot of agriculture that surrounds the area, whether it's in Nagley or whether it's throughout Columbiana or southern Mahoning County. And a lot of the farmers said that a lot of their buyers are nervous about buying product that is from East Palestine. So Ann Vogel, the director of the Ohio EPA, I have to give her a shout out. She came up with this system where we do constant soil sampling. So you actually have results from the soil that you're growing this product out of to show that it is clean soil. And I would like to incorporate that with the 20-year lookout, where when we say that we're doing air quality control, because we do have citizens there, there's 2,000 or 3,000 citizens living within the greater East Palestine and Nagley area, but we do this soil sampling too. I think that's going to be really essential to getting back to normal.
Are people still nervous, though, about being potentially contaminated themselves?
It's a little bit of a different nervous. I think if this was 4 or 5 months ago, I think it was much more panicky. I think now, even people that live there, I think you go back to your regular life, but I think it's in the back of your mind, and we have, the governor and the EPA have a permanent office there. And, we are trying to get FEMA to have a permanent office there too with a health center. So I think that is an amazing aspect of this.
And finally, what do you hope is done on the federal level? You have, the president not yet declaring a disaster declaration and also the Railway Safety Act.
I think we have an amazing possibility right now. I think with our committee that we had with the Ohio Senate, I think we did a lot of the groundwork. And I've seen that not only Senator J.D. Vance, but Senator Sherrod Brown have reached across the aisle, which in Washington you don't see a lot. And I think they both realize that this is a very, very important issue, not just for my district, but for all of Ohio. We saw right around the disaster at East Palestine, we had 4 other train derailments. So I think J.D. Vance and Sherrod Brown really could be essential in making something federal happen. And, if Sherrod Brown can get the ear of the president and the administration to help push this through Congress and what the work we've done in the State House, I think Ohio could lead the future for one of the safest states for rail.
Senator Rulli, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And it's expected that federal bill should make its way through Congress by the end of the year. The bill would set several new requirements for railroads, including mandating using those hot box detectors every 15 miles. Still ahead, from a single reading room to a high-tech learning center, we look at 150 years of the Columbus Library. And with the funding measures up for vote this November, I'll ask about the plans for the next century. The Columbus Metropolitan Library is asking voters to approve a levy that would bring in $39 million for library operations in its first year in effect. If approved, homeowners would pay $53 for each $100,000 of their home's assessed value. This is the first time the library has put a levy on the ballot in 13 years. It's a move to secure the library's future, and it comes at a time when the Columbus Metropolitan Library is celebrating its past and its progress to where it is today. 2023 is the 150th anniversary of the Columbus Metropolitan Library. And CML CEO Pat Lewinski joins me now to talk about all of this. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Thanks, Doug. Great to be here.
Well, let's talk about the levy first of all. Why does the library need this money?
Yeah. Well, the levy has been a part of the library's financial support since 1976. And the time frame between our levies is usually a long period of time, 10 or more years. when this last levy was passed in 2010, we told the voters that we wouldn't come back for at least 10 years.
It's been 13.
And it's been 13, so we think there's been a good extension of our promise. And also we think we've done some great work over the last 13 years. I think what is important for voters to realize is that when they vote for a levy, it is indexed to the year that it is approved. So our annual increases since 2010 have been 0.4% on average for 13 years. So at some point, with 8 and 9% inflation, you know you have to go back. And so the levy supports really everything that the library does, the materials, the technology, the programs, and facilities needs.
Well, let's move on now and talk about the present and looking forward. Looking back. So how is the Metro Library celebrating its 150th from here forward?
Well, there's been a lot that we have rolled out this year because it is such an important milestone in our history. First of all, to imagine 150 years ago, this library was formed before the airplane, before the light bulb. Just pretty amazing to actually see that. So we have had numerous author programs. We have had a special promotion with many of our cultural partners where showing a library or obtaining a cultural pass allows a family to visit one of our cultural institutions at no charge. We had our first ever Columbus Book Festival over a 2-day weekend in July, our gift back to the community from our library's foundation. And almost 34,000 people attended over 2 days. Wow. And so this is a town that loves its library, it loves reading, it loves books, and we're just so thrilled to be at the center of it.
So looking back 150 years, how did this all get started to be where it is today?
Well, this is so hard for us to really appreciate the perspective. 8 years after the end of the Civil War, a group of community leaders established the library. It was it was a reading room in the old City Hall at that period of time. Just a reading room. And it actually took 37 years until the main library was built and opened in 1907. What's really important is back in 1870s and through the end of that century, public libraries in many parts of the country were segregated libraries. This library, in its founding documents, said it would be free and open to all. And in fact, that was such an important principle that when the main library opened in 1907, still there today, over the front door, open to all. And I think it guides our philosophy, and we serve everyone who walks through those doors with the same level of service that they should receive.
Now, you've been with the library a decade or so now. What are the keys to making the Columbus Metropolitan Library a library of the 21st century?
Well, I think it starts with service and respect and relationships. We have a incredibly dedicated staff. We have a customer-first philosophy. All of our employees go through that level of training. It's really to talk about the importance of what each customer needs. We can say that we serve millions of people every year, but it is the sum of the individual relationships that our people have. And I think that is the heart of any organization's success, is the dedication and passion of your people and their ability to deliver that service.
Pat Lewinski with the Columbus Metropolitan Library. Thank you so much, and congratulations on 150 years. Not that you've been there for all 150 of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, that is all of our time for Face the State. Thank you for being here with us today. Have a great rest of your day.